Hello students, today I will teach you the poem The Sea and the Skylark by G.M. Hopkins, whose full name was Gerard Manley Hopkins. So let's start with the introduction of the poem. The poem, entitled The Sea and the Skylark, is written by one of the greatest poets of Victorian age, that is Gerard Manley Hopkins. Though Hopkins belonged chronologically to the Victorian age, his poetry marks a complete departure from the bonds of convention and paved the way for the emergence of modern poetry. So, by birth, he was a Victorian poet, but by his writing style, he is considered more as a modern poet than Victorian. His was the pioneer's work. His poetry was first published in 1918, almost 30 years after his death. So it is quite clear that his poetry was not published in Victorian age, though he wrote in Victorian age, but it was published very late. He had the analytical powers of a scientist, the shaping eye of an artist, and the power of expression of a poet. His poetry belongs to modernism on the basis of its subject matter, its use of language, and the experimentation in rhythm and syntax. सो उन्होंने जो विक्टोरियन कन्वेंशंस थे उन्हें ब्रेक किया. उन्होंने विक्टोरियन कन्वेंशंस के अकॉर्डिंग वो जो परिपाटी चली आ रही थी उस पर अपनी पोइट्री को बेस्ड नहीं रखा और उसे चेंज किया और उन्होंने अलग तरह की पोइट्री लिखना शुरू किया. उन्होंने एक्सपेरिमेंट्स किए अपनी लैंग्वेज में, रिदम में और सेंटेक्सेस में. देयर इज़ अ क्वेश्चनिंग ऑफ रिलेशनशिप ऑफ गॉड टू मैन एंड मैन टू नेचर. उनकी पोएम्स में बहुत ज़्यादा क्वेश्चनिंग है ईश्वर और मानव के संबंध और मानव और प्रकृति के संबंधों के बीच में. वेरी ऑफन ही कॉइन न्यू वर्ड्स, यूज्ड आर्केक और colloquial expressions to meet the requirement of sprung rhythm. Sprung rhythm was created by G.M. Hopkins. It was invented by, it was used, widely used by him, and this rhythm permitted him greater flexibility in his poems. So this poem, The Sea and the Skylark, is written in the form of a sonnet. It was written in 1877 in a seaside town a few miles from St. Bruno's College, where Hopkins lived for 3 years from 1874 to 1877 to complete his theological studies. This is the introduction to the poet, and now I will explain you what is a sonnet. This poem is written in the form of a sonnet. So sonnet is a poem that has 14 lines and it is written in lyrical form, and it has 14 lines, and this poem is divided in two parts, octave and sestet. Octave part of the poem consists of 8 lines with a fixed rhyme scheme, and sestet has 6 lines with a fixed rhyme scheme. So this poem is divided in two parts, and in octave and sextet there is a shift of thoughts in both parts. जो बात ऑक्टेव में कही जाती है उससे अलग बात सेस्टेट में कही जाती है. एक शिफ्ट होती है थॉट प्रोसेस में पोइट के में, और इस कविता में भी इसी तरह का है. इन ऑक्टेव द पोइट हैज़ described, or he expressed that he is listening to sounds, that is the sound of sea and the sound of skylark, that is a bird, and he's enjoying these two eternal sounds. And in sestet he expresses his sadness for the life of modern people, because he says that he makes a sad prophecy that the static and dynamic aspect of man which are now in the process of decay and disintegration, will utterly collapse, and man, deprived of all his vitality and creativity, will find himself moving fast towards that original state of slime from which he had emerged. So second part, first part में he is he is describing the two sounds that are pleasure giving, the sound of sea and the sound of skylark. And in sestate part he is expressing his sadness for the life of modern people because they are deteriorating very fast. So this is the we can say that the theme of this sonnet is a contrast between the life-giving purity of nature and the sordidness of the civilization that man is creating. So this poem is an attack on the town life. It is a general meditation on nature and man occasioned by a particular scene, that is the Ryle in Wales. So this is all about the theme of the poem, introduction of the poem, and the introduction to the, this is all about Gerard Manley Hopkins. I will discuss the poem in next video.